What's going on, guys? Welcome back to NolanTCG, and we are back here today for another deck profile, and this time, it's for Paleozoic Frog. So we've gone for much more of like a standard Paleo Frog list. We haven't mixed it in with stuff like Amazement or Eldritch, things like that. We've gone for pretty much just a straightforward pure list. I decided to kind of work around with it a little bit and just kind of see what we could have fun with and a bit of creativity. I've tried to work in some OCG tendencies, and we're going to see how that kind of plays out. As always though, before we do get started, please remember to drop down below and hit that subscribe button if you are new here, because we are always happy to have new people on the channel. And let's get on into this deck profile. Before we do get started on this one though, it is brought to you of course by yourplaymat.com, who got us our beautiful NolanTCG extra deck sleeves. These are available on yourplaymat.com, as well as you can get custom sleeves and custom playmats, so whatever you need for the current format. There is an affiliate link in the description down below that does get you a little bit of a discount on your order. Also, enter the code NOLAN10YP for 10% off your order. Also kicks back a little bit to the channel, so everything will be very much appreciated. If you're shopping there, you're getting custom sleeves, custom playmats down. Make sure to enter our code at checkout. But let's get on into this deck profile. Okay, so starting us off as always for our Paleo list, we are of course playing 3 copies of Swap Frog. Yeah, just pretty much you want to see Swap Frog with another frog, and then your life will be good, hopefully. Then we go with 3 copies of Dupe after that. Professor Frog will grant you plays if your opponent attacks it. Just remember, it misses timing almost every other way, so that's kind of fun. And then lastly, we have the Ronin Totem, just for bringing itself back, banishing out the other ones, and just giving you that kind of continued push. Typically, you won't want to overdo it, because you will want to save stuff for when you're going for game. Then we get into the one hand trap that we play. As always, do feel free to switch your hand traps out for whatever you'd like. We are main decking just 3 copies of Ash, just to give us that little bit of protection for, say, our opponent just decides to just activate Red Eyes Fusion. You do want to have a bit of protection there, you don't want to be completely defenseless, so yeah. 3 copies of Ash is what we're going to have in the main deck. Then we get into our spell line. So this is very much gone down the route of how the OCG typically plays decks to this style. And that is to go with 3 copies of Extravagance, 2 copies of Prosperity, and then 1 copy of Duality. Essentially, we're playing these ratios and lines just to allow for as much consistency as possible. We're playing a control deck, of course, so you want to have as much access to essentially just cardboard as possible. You want to be able to have the right things for the right situation, and playing just straight out 6 abilities to draw cards is kind of useful. In the situations where, say, you don't have enough extra deck space, or you're a bit too concerned by activating either Prosperity or your Extravagance, you can, of course, always discard them for stuff like Dynamiscus. You will need cards to discard in this deck, so it's not super horrible if you just like stuck with, say, a Prosperity and an Extravagance. You only want to use one of them. You slap down the one you want to use, you hold the other for hopefully a Dynamiscus or another discard outlet that you may require. When we get into the extra deck, you will see there are also more discard outlets in there, clearly, because we're going to be playing a Nightmare package. So, yeah. It's not horrible to have these cards and not be able to activate them, because you will need cards to discard, and you don't want to be discarding cards that will give you value. Of course, you can always do a sneaky discard of a Paleo Trap, and then you can bring back the Paleo Trap. That's pretty good. Speaking of Paleo Traps, we do get into our trap line, and that's where our Paleos start. So we are playing 3 copies of Candina to start, just essentially to book our opponent's monsters, so they can't link summon. You can book the Tri-Brigades, they can't activate. That's always good. Then we go into our Dynamiscus, of course, just to get that banishing. It does cost you a card, however, you do have cards to discard in this deck, so it's not horrendous. Then lastly, for our Paleos, we're playing 3 copies of Oilinoides, essentially just here to clear out spell and trap cards. It is a free pop. Again, body on board after. You can't complain with that. Then we get into our more generic traps. So we are playing 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence just to give us that bit of a interaction with our opponent. We don't want to be completely defenseless. We do have the Ash, but the Impermanence is another good thing that we can follow up with. Then we get into our Solemns. So we are playing 2 copies of Solemn Strike and then 2 copies of Solemn Judgment. You can mix these up for whatever you'd like, really. They are just generic like traps to kind of sit in your line. So you can say play 3 of one and then maybe take out the other, play something else. It is always an option. And then next up, after that, we are playing 3 copies of Trap Trick. Trap Trick will get us into our next card. It can also get us into our Impermanence, into our Paleo Traps, whatever we really require. But it is 2 copies of Compulsory Evacuation Device after that. Just simply removing the normal summon in the current format I really enjoy. It seems like a lot of decks have a lot of problems playing around that, thus I'm playing 2 copies of Compulsory. You can look at playing something like Torrential, that's always an option. However, you don't really want to lose a massive amount of resources in this deck. Like, say if you've got a Totally Awesome on board, you can't really afford to torrential your own Totally, so you'll need to like kind of mix around and like work your way around that. So yeah, I've gone with compulsory in the main deck. And then lastly, rounding out the main deck, 2 copies of Crackdown, just so we can take the opponent's monster and just kind of hope they can't play around that. That will then get us into our extra deck. So of course, starting us off here, we do have 3 copies of Totally Awesome. Given that we're playing Extravagance, you do 100% need to max out of this. Just being left with 1 isn't the end of the world. If you do lose 2 to an Extravagance, or you kind of need to get rid of 1 off Prosp, 1 Totally Awesome can recur itself, so you don't have to stress about that. It would be nice to be able to like constantly recur, say, a Swap Frog, or for example, if you've sighted in Gamma Seal, you can recur your Gamma Seal, which is always good. But yeah, you can get by with just 1 of this. When I originally played this deck, like back in the day, I only had 1 Totally Awesome. So yeah, kind of had to make do with 1 and learned how to play that way, didn't I? Then we get into the rest of our stuff. So we've got now 2 copies of Paleozoic Opabenia. Gets you that Trap Search, so you do kind of want to play 2 of it. You want to have access to 1 when you need it. Then after that, 1 copy of Anomal Icarus. It's not the end of the world if you lose this card. It's just kind of like a cool little tech you can kind of float around with. Something that does kind of matter if you do lose it, it is 1 copy of Skycav Centuria. I would probably recommend playing multiples of this if you do have access to multiple. I thought I had multiple, for some reason I just can't find them. This is essentially your Dragoon out. It does also get you through to your Zeus play if you do need to like completely swing the way the game's going. Your Skycav is the way to do that. Of course, after the Skycav, we do have the 1 copy of Downed, just so we can get through to that Zeus after this. Gives you that more material. Away you go. Then we are playing that new F-Zero line, given that we've got a bunch of rank 2s, so we're playing the 1 copy of Utopic Future and the 1 copy of Utopic Future Draco to give us that 1 negate. Then next off, we do have the Zeuses. We're playing 2 of it just because, yeah, we are playing an Extravagance build. You do want to make sure you always have 1 in the extra deck, just if you need to completely reset the game state and get some stuff out of your hand. And then lastly, we get into our Link line. This is essentially your OTK package, so we are playing 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix, can get rid of some pesky back row. 1 copy of Nightmare Unicorn, of course, can spin stuff away. And then lastly, we have the 1 copy of Access Code. Essentially, you got to be linking these 1 into 1 into 1. You can like bypass the Phoenix. You don't necessarily have to make the Phoenix, but you do typically want to go into the Unicorn before you go into the Access Code, just so you can make that Access Code as big as possible. That's pretty obvious though. Like everyone's doing that at this point. If you don't really know that, then you're probably using your Access Code wrong. I do apologize. But that wraps up here for the deck profile as always. Please remember to comment down below if you have any recommendations or things that you would change. I'm always happy to hear interactions and different things that I could be doing with my Paleo decks, so do make sure to comment that down below. If you're watching this week, like straight after it goes up, we are going to be doing a charity live stream on Friday for the Starlight Foundation here in Australia. Has a little bit of something to do with that I work with, so we're going to be, doing that. So do come along. It's going to be a fairly decent sized stream, so hopefully you won't miss it. And as always, I've been Ben from NolanTCG, and have a good afternoon, everybody.